Hi everyone. Wasn't gonna do a project today, but it's kind of a hot day out there, and well, I'm kind of stuck in here. Here, too warm to really do much of anything else or play golf, etc. So I'm gonna go ahead now and start a project. What I got here is a U18b. This is an Intermountain model. It's still in its original box. Well, I've actually taken most of the box off, as you can see. I don't. What's interesting about this unit is that Intermountain is kind of a bit of an upstart company. They haven't been around very long. They've got a pretty smooth drivetrain, pretty much the same as what Atlas uses. Although I think the motor makes a little bit more racket from my current experience on these models. This engine's a little bit different though. It's not equipped with DCC&sound from the factory like I usually buy these. It's an older one, I think. The problem I'm having right now is I'm not sure which edition this is, and the documentation really is kind of non-existent. This is all I was given with it, and yeah. So I don't know if this is the one of the two, which variation of the locomotive this is. There are a couple different ones. When the locomotive initially debuted, I'll try not to go too far into the background, but just to explain what my dilemma is. When this locomotive originally debuted, it had two versions. It had the QSI sound equipped version, and then it had an 8-pin NMRA 8-pin DCC ready version. Then there was a lighter version that ran after this one, which I think used the same number again available, but that one had lock sound, and it had the 21 pin, the new standard 21 pin decoder available as a DCC ready, a DCC equipped, I should say, or DCC and sound equipped unit. There was no DCC ready option. So I guess the easiest way of identifying this unit is to just go ahead and put it on my power track. First time this is coming out of the box, and basically try it on DCC and see if it makes the infamous noise. Yeah, there is a mild separation on the railings, but the seller told me about that. That's fine, I know about it. To be honest, these things break so easily, I don't really mind. It probably would have happened with me handling this, considering all the work I'm going to have to do to get this thing running in my standards at least. Just hook up my let me just hook up my DCC system quickly here. Pull this out, plug that in. Yeah, let's do some of this stuff back there. There we go. Okay, plug my DCC system in to the wall over here. Go. And let's see what happens. Yep, it is DCC ready. I can tell that because of the noise it's making. One might freak out and think I shorted something out, but no, there's no decoder on here. And even if there was, it doesn't have sound, so I would have to replace it either way. But there is no decoder on it. Anyway, the first step on this engine is going to be to get myself some foam and turn this thing upside down and literally start to take it apart so I can see what I got to work with. Before I do that, I want to get some stuff together. I think I'll just use my box that it came with this to keep my parts in. Or actually, do I have a little box over here someplace? Oh, here we go. Yes, I do. For my speakers, this is a speaker. This is a box from a speaker. I'm going to go ahead and use this to store it in, store the couplers in. What I need now is my egg crate foam. Grab it. I'm going to clean up. Let's move some stuff to the side here. Get some of this stuff out of the way. No, it's insane. I just cleaned this up and it's right back to where it was. Some days it just doesn't pay to get out of bed, I guess. I just cleaned this thing up, and now, again, as usual, I have all kinds of screws and couplers everywhere. Alrighty. Here we go. Foam. Much needed. It goes right over here. I'll take this now and just simply put it on top of the foam. And grab my favorite screwdriver. Right over here. And proceed to take the couplers out. I'm going to put them in this little plastic box for safekeeping because I don't know how long this job is going to take. I don't even know what I'm working with. This could have the 8-pin again, and it could have the 21-pin. I have both of those, but I'm hoping to install something more special on this thing. Note that I did not install my horn on this. In fact, I'm going to put the horn, now that I think of it, away. The horn and sunshades do not come pre-installed on these models. Let me go ahead and just put the screw in here. I don't want to lose anything. These parts are hard to come by. As with all model trains these days, very difficult to get any kind of parts at all. Ooh, that's stuck in there good. There it goes. Tell this thing has never been apart. I think it's been sitting. I think this is the 8-pin. It's been sitting in there so long. Got that in my little bin there. Let me grab my horn. Now this is the horn assembly that comes in the box. Right over here. One with the sunshades. They're actually metal as far as I know. Well, actually, no, the horn is metal, but I think the sunshades are plastic. They might both be plastic, I'm not sure, but I think they're metal. I did 2 of these. The biggest issue with these engines is that you don't get the horn actually even a place to even mount the horn. Well, this one actually looks like it has a hole in the top, which is unusual. Usually these don't come with it, but I'm gonna have to go over it again and make sure that's how it's supposed to go. The instructions do not tell you how to mount the horn either. They're very, very limited. They just tell you have to mount it. Okay, so I just took my screw out there. Give the coupler box a push with my thumb to get it loose. There it goes. And out it comes. Just going to throw that in my little box here on the side, and I'm going to seal this up so nothing can get lost. There we go. Now I'm ready to pull the shell off. Now, I should say TCS had a disassembly, and I'm going to be using one of their boards to work on this engine. I plan to, at least. That's one of my options. And they say you should take the actual railings off using a sharp, pointy device to kind of lift them off the frame, and then just work around it. But that isn't the way I prefer to do it. It's the awkward way, and it's also a better way of damaging things because you have to work around the frame, essentially. This is the better method, in my opinion. Take the whole frame off, and there we go. It's coming up. You have to grasp it and pull really hard to get it loose. You can, if you want, if you're gutsy enough to take a toothpick in there and give it a shove. Not a toothpick, a flathead screwdriver. I usually use a very fine one, and carefully pry it if you want to, but I prefer to avoid that when I can. This has even got some paint here. You see what's holding it shut. If we look here, the frame actually has a little orange paint on it. So it looks like this was literally painted shut when this was worked on at the factory. There we go. It's coming up finally. I had to really put a lot of pressure on that. And here we are. I can now get rid of this. I'm going to put this shell right over here to the side. I don't want to damage it. Put it right there. I can now also remove this thing here. Ooh, I don't like that. What is this piece of plastic that went up on that? Did something break off the shell? No, just got on there somehow. Okay. Maybe it was inside the shell or something, and that's maybe what jammed it shut. Anyway, got it off. Slide out and get rid of my foam. No need for this anymore. And here we have it. This is in fact the pardon the shutter there. This happens to be a 8-pin style board on here. You can see the dummy plug is buried right underneath this wiring loom right here. So I pull this a little bit closer. That's where it is. Zoom in a bit for you. And that's where your decoder would basically go. It has everything else in the places you'd expect it to be. Nothing too exciting to look at here. What I'm really interested in is whether I can use this board. This is a TCS with Keep Alive board for one of these engines. It's the board right there. That appears to be a perfect fit for it. All the plugs seem to line up, so I think this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be a simple install. I'm going to unplug this board literally and plug this one in. I'm going to put this back in its protective static bag. One rule with working with one of these motherboards, you want to always protect it as much as you can from the static electricity. Even though I'm in a very humid room right now, which keeps the static down, it tends to make it less of a problem. I'm not going to mess around. I want to make sure this is safe because I don't want to buy another one. They're not too expensive. You can get them for about 40 bucks online, but still, why take a chance if you don't have to? So the first step is going to be to carefully remove these things and see which way they go. So the first step is to carefully pull these plugs out, wiggle it free. This is a little bit easy. This is obviously a lot easier than having to solder anything. This will get rid of that stupid 8-pin harness, which is a bit of a pain to work with. It always takes a lot of space up. It's a pain to kind of get in and out. There we go. These are the 2 track powers connections right there. Gonna have to undo this. There's also this charming little zip tie, which I'm gonna have to undo to get at all this stuff. Gotta be careful not to break the wires on this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break the lock on it. I hate to have to unzip tie something that's been so neatly done, but I need to get access to this thing. And there's a heat shrinked wire over here. I see this is a joint or something. Here. I really don't want to clip this. Oh, I'm going to do here is I think I can unthread these wires and give myself some room to get the clippers in. So the snips good. So I can go. Perfect. Okay, I got the little snip tie off. I can now proceed to go further in with this and start reassembling the unit. Or actually continue disassembling the unit. Now I got these two track powers out. One is from the back truck, one is from the front. And here's the motor drive, which has to come out. I'm going to actually just take these and go right in with them to this. We have track power left and right. These are keyed plugs, which means they can only go in one way, not the other. So one is in. Here's the other track power. I think that's a track power. Let me just trace this wire down again and confirm that it is running out of there. Yep, this is the red, that's the yellow, that's the track power. So I'm going to just run this right into my board right here. Pardon that blip there, I just moved the camera down a little bit. Give you guys a better view of what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in this one right here. There we go. So now I've just done the two track assignments. The two truck assignments. Now I'm going to do the front headlight. What's funny, there's only one headlight set on this. Ooh, that's interesting. Very interesting. Do this wire again to get it in there. Just pry it up. There's a little tab here, as always, with these plugs. The one thing I don't like about them, while they do make things a lot easier in terms of working on these engines, they create huge headaches in terms of getting these plugs out, because if they get stuck, you really got to work on them to get them free. There it goes, up. I may have bent the pins on this little board here, but I don't mind because I'm pulling the board out anyway. This very clearly is the headlight height attachment that's going to go on the front over here. Just going to undo those wires for the time being. Now I'm going to disconnect the motor drive and plug that in. Almost took the socket with it, but that doesn't matter because, again, I'm taking that board out. Speaker, and there should be a motor. Here we go. Motor drive. It's labeled MRT on the board. Before I can get that in, I'm going to have to take this board out itself. I'm ready to do that now. So grab again my Phillips head screwdriver. Pull the screws out. I'm going to put the screws back in, so I don't want to lose them. I keep the orientation exactly the same as the one that I'm taking out. Again, the smell out. One problem I have with these screwdrivers is the point tends to come out very easily on them. Let's go back over here now and get this thing done. It's coming up. Go. Wires out. Let's see here. Oh, I see. There's one more. There are two more screws on this. I thought there were only two of them there. Screw fell, but it didn't fall inside. That's good. It's not magnetic, which is unfortunate. It's not easy if I had a magnetic tip so I can get the thing out of there. I guess it's an advantage working with all these delicate electronics. Without having a magnetically charged tip. There we go. That screws out. And I can now pull the board out once I get this thing clear. There we go. Old board out. Now, the new board goes in much the same way. Just is going to line it up the same way it was. I'm going to install the motor drive, which is going to go up here. I'm going to bring it in around the other side. Or actually, no, I can't. I got to go around up in here. There we go. Tighten that one up. Done. Okay, so that takes care of all that. Now it's time to reinstall my LED light, which is this little panel here. It just goes straight down into the front. Alrighty, can this thing go in there? Yeah, it does. And it doesn't seem to be held too tightly. I gotta carefully plug this plug in. Let me do the plug actually first, because this looks like it's gonna need. I gotta see what I'm doing before I get anything else done. Plug just is the opposite of putting it out. Just simply line it up. Make sure you get this little keyway, that little groove on the side, lined up with the plug. Don't force it. Once it's in, gently press it down. Check all your connections. Make sure they're well pressed in, and you're good to go. Now with all that done, I can now go and install this back in place. I may glue this in place, but then again, I want to make it so I can take it out. So let's just push it down a little bit, and that should hopefully hold it. Now the next step is going to be to deal with this mess of wiring I have here, because I had to tear it all apart. I don't like having to do that, but, well, obviously I wasn't going to keep it stock, and if I'm not going to keep it stock, you have to undo the wiring. So what we got here. I've got 3 decoders sitting over here. What I now look for, the decoder I'm going to use, obviously now that I've converted this to an 18-pinner, I can't use my lock sound. I can't use my, my TCS decoder. But I can use, as I was saying, as I kind of gave it away there, I can use my lock sound 18-pinner. 21-pinner, sorry. I keep calling these 18-pinners. I don't know why I keep calling them that. Now, one's also probably noticed, hey, how are you going to get the speaker installed on this? And that's a good question. There is a speaker connection right there, but it's a plug. Luckily, if we look at this lock sound decoder, which I will be using, which is a 21-pin, it has 2 wires coming out of it, as we see here. These 2 wires. I don't know how about that's going to show up. Yeah, anyway, those 2 wires, I'm going to just simply link right up to my speaker and just go like that. So I'm treating it sort of like an 8-pin decoder install, even though it really isn't. Now, the first step of all this is to get that done. I just noticed there are 2 headlights on this unit on both sides. What I want to do now is get this thing plugged in, like so. Now, the trick with installing this, I almost made the same mistake I've made when I first dealt with one of these from TCS. And that is to not put, with this new 18-pin standard, to not put the actual plug in the decoder. It's backwards. You want to actually plug this base part in, and this is where your the pins are going to go through on the top. So in short, this is how it should be when you install this side facing up. Just making sure I have the orientation correct. And also make sure that when you install this, you push it down straight. The wires are not in the way. Some people think that that'll keep the wires clear, but it actually is only going to cause problems if you clamp a wire down. It's very easy to bend these pins. So again, make sure you do it right. In fact, I'm looking at my motor drive, and this thing already took a wallop from the shell at the factory, it looks like, unless this was open beforehand, but I didn't detect it because it was so well sealed. Okay, so now I'm going to line this up here. The one empty pin again goes on the one missing socket. Line up real nice. Guide to the jungle of wiring you got here. Make sure you don't trap any wires underneath it. Check again, again, and again. I may have to bend in a little bit more, folks. Sorry about that, but I do not want to ruin my decoder. I'm going to actually lift this thing up and make sure I have the pins lined up underneath it. Some may laugh at me for how hardcore I'm taking this, but it is so easy to bend these pins, I cannot tell you. So now that I'm sure, anyway, now that I'm sure I've got all my pins lined up and I'm not squashing any wires, I'm going to gently press it down with my thumb, making sure it sits flat. Okay, so that takes care of that. Sits at an angle, though. I don't like how this thing is angled up, but that's just how this is. I'm going to go ahead now and see how it works. Placed on the track. I think I have my power on. You won't hear any sound because the speaker isn't connected. I'm just now doing a rough test to make sure everything is Okie dokie. Here goes nothing. Power on. No smoke. That's a good sign. And it responds. Good. Headlights. Don't seem to be working. Let's try it again. Headlight. Oh, yeah, there they go. They're working. It's kind of hard to tell, but they are working, I can assure you. So we fixed that. Power off. So I've dodged the main bullet. Now all I have to do is come up with a speaker assembly. What I think I'm going to do, because I don't have the stock speaker, which would go right over here, as you see there are 4 screws, and you'd screw it down, is to use a Railmaster speaker. If you look at the literature for Intermountain's website, which is who makes this locomotive, they actually suggest looking to Railmaster for alternative speakers, and I've got one already on hand that I really like, and I'm going to use. Let's grab it here. Got this in storage up here. And nope, it's not there. Here we go. Got one left. This is the ever typical and ubiquitous 1436-H, which I like using. I like these speakers because they're just the right size. They're not huge, but at the same time, they're not small. And they will give out quite a bit of fidelity and sound. Not just sound, but fidelity too, so you'll hear everything very clearly. So here's what it looks like. And what I could do is try to go in on the side here, but then I'd have to drill holes through this. And as you see, it's not going to quite fit. It's a little bit too long. So I'm tempted to see if I can mount this to the shell to the top of my shell, and just see if I can drop it down. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to have to come up with something else. Anyway, first things first, let me grab my shell, put a little tape on this, and see if I can install it like I want to. Okay, this didn't work out so well. As we can see, the rear is nowhere near touching it. So, well, that's a nice idea, but that failed, so I'm going to have to try to find another speaker. What I think I'm going to do is get in touch with Intermountain and see if they can sell me what would normally have been a stock speaker for this engine, because I don't have one, obviously, because this was not a sound-equipped engine, and just see if I can do that. Let me pull this thing out carefully here, because obviously I'm not going to use this anymore. There it goes, got it off. Okay, so the shell is still okay, and I did make progress, but I can't install it with that particular decoder, with that particular setup, so I'm going to have to now basically put this back in its box and just forget about it for the time being, because I can't use this speaker for that. I'll find another use for these, I always do, but that speaker is NG no good for this project. So, back up on top goes, and now I've got to come up with something else. What I have also here, and I might try this because I do have this, because I do have a few of these laying around, is the much smaller block sound speaker. This little guy over here, I'm sure that would fit in the original point, and even has a screw to mount it in position. The problem is it doesn't match the screws the way it should. I'm pretty sure this would actually go in there without a problem, but this is a very tiny speaker, and I'm not so sure I want to have something this small in there. So I don't think that's going to be in for it. I'm going to have to do a little shopping with Lock Sound and see exactly what would work with it, and maybe call someone at Intermountain up and see if they can come up with a better idea for this engine, because this clearly is not going to work. Take a look right over here. Here, now this speaker here, I could definitely fit in there. In fact, it's tempting because this would go in there, but it's too small. I want more fidelity than what this could offer. That's how it would go, and it would fit, it looks like, but be way too small. I'd like to get something a little bit bigger for this thing. So I'll have to see if I can shop around and find a speaker for this kind of engine, see what's recommended, maybe browse around the forums. For the time being, I'm going to put this project to the side because I have other things I have to get done. But anyway, it's mostly done now. I just need to find a speaker and basically splice it in, and it's all set to go. What I think I'll try doing basically now, since I have the plug for it anyway, is to contact Intermountain and see if they can sell me the stock speaker for this engine, because that would make my life a lot easier. Just drop right in place, and I know it would work, and I wouldn't have to mess around with the wires too much. But anyway, for the time being, that's going to be it for this project. Just going to put the shell back on it and stow it to the back over here. And when I get to it, I get to it. Alrighty, when I left off last, I tried to install that Railmaster speaker, and it just didn't go in there. There was no way in heck that was going to fit. So, with that speaker clearly being too large, and I didn't like the other option of the smaller lock sound speaker I had, because I know for a fact that's not going to be a very loud one, and this particular unit needs definition. These things suffer from being quiet. I decided to try a new approach. What I have got here is a new type of speaker that was more recently released. It's called the DS1240 box decoder, and the big deal about it is that, well, if you look at how skinny this thing is, it's like it's not much thicker than a business card. It's about the width of about 1 or 2 business cards, and the speaker's mounted on the top right here. It's designed to just slip right in, and I think this will do the job because it's a very small speaker and it'll fit in very nicely. What I'm going to do anyway, just to make sure I'm right, is I'm going to go ahead and install it, just mock it up and see if it'll fit in. If it does work, all's well. I will go ahead and just start installing. Okay, so I'm going to just take this small section here, which I've taken off, and apply it to the back of the unit. The speaker on this is on the front. This doesn't look like a speaker head, but it is. So I'm going to apply my tape to the rear of this unit, and then apply this in turn to the back, the very back of this engine, right by where the fan grill is on the top there. This might make it a little bit harder to see the fan detailing, but at this point I'm more interested in getting sound in here, to seeing if I can get this done. I tried to find the speaker for this engine that's in stock, and it appears not to exist, when I can tell the stock speaker for this item. Okay, so I put it in there. Let's go ahead and see if I can get the top on. So that'll do it. So now, because I can fit this, as you see, it makes this gap just perfect. I can go ahead now and actually do the install and get the engine running. So the first things first on this, I now have to solder that speaker into it. I have to splice this in place. Alrighty, as you can hear, it's running, and it's really loud. Just like I was before when I tested. Just going to test this thing and see if we can go forward. Yes, I can. Let's go backward. Yep. Looks good. Reverse headlights on. Forward headlights on. Yep. That'll do it for you. Let's go turn this off and see if I get front headlights. I hope I actually put it in front forward, wouldn't it? There we go. Front headlights. Okay. Let me just stop this here for a second. Turn the sound off on this. There we go. And cut the power on the DCC system. I would love to tell you that I basically did it the way I had my cutting plan to splice this into the wire, into the standard decoding wires, and it magically worked perfectly. Unfortunately, that didn't work, as is typical with anything. It just wouldn't fit. I tried every possible trick in the book to try to make this darn thing fit. It wouldn't work. So what I had to do was what I was thinking of in the back of my mind, and I did mention it briefly, is I took one of these speakers. Let me just grab one for you. I have several of these old MRC speakers. They come with the decoders. They're a useless size. They're just too big to fit in most locomotives, and they're too small to provide the adequate sound on the engines they do fit in. So I did is I took one of these, which I've gotten from decoders I've long since installed, well past any warranty they have on them, and working better with different speakers I've already upgraded them to. And I just cut the wire off this splice wire and used this plug because it's a standard plug and it plugs right in. And I then basically wired it into that Railmaster speaker, and then in turn plugged that into the decoder board and then wired all that together. What happened, and I should mention originally with the other install, is like I was dreading, as I was trying to install it, I could not figure out what it was caught on. It was caught on the wires hooked into the decoder, and it ripped one of them out. So I had to disconnect both wires in hopes of saving this decoder, which worked, thank goodness. And I feel very happy about this. And then I went ahead and I just spliced the other wire in, and, well, as you can see, it fit. It fits actually perfectly, much better than the other thing ever did work. So that takes care of it. It's nice and loud. The next thing all I have to do now is install the couplers, which I think I'm going to get to. And then I have to figure out how I'm going to put the horn in. Again, there are no holes, as we can see on the top here, dual throat, except one in the front here. I think that's actually where the horn might go. I'm going to have to consult my instruction manual. But if that is the case, I'll just drop it on top where the hood is and just be happy with it there. Because I prefer not to modify things if I don't have to. I don't like going nuts with designs and stuff. I don't like messing with glue because it always, in my opinion, in my at least experience, doesn't go very well. Let me see if I can find where I put this. I was smart with this engine when I took it apart, as many of you saw. Well, actually, all of you, I hope all of you actually saw it because, well, I did film it. When I took this engine apart, as you noticed, I got one of these little boxes here, and I put the parts in it. So I got to find it. Oh, there it is. I got shoved into the corner over here. That happens from time to time. No big deal. Just find through it. Found it. Took me long enough, didn't it? Well, I'm not sure exactly where the horn goes, so I'll just focus on getting the couplers in for right now. Got my little kit here. Let me get this controller out of the way. Put my soldering gear to the side now because I'm done with that. I'm actually really glad I'm done with the soldering part. That almost gave me a heart attack with this unit. Okay, I'm going to dump these out very carefully over here on the front of me. I'll start assembling them. There's nothing too shocking about this kit. It's essentially, these are standard metal KD couplers. That's actually fine. They're very reliable. They're what most model railroaders would change this engine to if they bought it. Okay, the couplers are on. Last stop on this train and for this engine is to simply have the horn installed. As you see, I placed it on the top now, but it's not secured. I'm going to have to put a little glue on this. I'm going to use some of the good old-fashioned testers, plastic cement, because I don't want this stuff to get off. How I do this is I'm just going to dip the bottom part in the plastic cement right on the top here. Just going to dip it in there, then pull it right back out again. Then I'm going to simply place it right where the hole should be and gently press it in place once I have it aligned correctly. There we go. And once that's all dry, I'll be all set to go. And that'll do it. So all I have to do now is wait for the horn to dry in place and I'll be all set. And that basically brings this project to an end for the time being, at least. I just need now to sort of go back and program it. Okay, here we have the Pickens unit. And this is the one with this really tiny speaker in it. This DS124 box speaker thing. It's this skinny, as you can see how tiny that thing is. And I am stunned with how loud this thing is. It is literally causing my eardrums to burst. I'm going to have to actually turn this one down. That's how loud this thing is. And it's a tiny speaker that'll fit anywhere. Now let me just demonstrate. I'll fire my layout back up again. Oops. You'll hear it all over the other engines very easily. Just a second. Give us a good test run, throttle it up. The bass on that speaker is just incredible. The other speakers are all very tinny. This thing has actual bass on it, which is something you just don't hear. The horn is kind of weak on it for some strange reason, but the sound, that is just incredible. Considering how tiny that thing is that it can put out that kind of sound, wow. Now mind you, that's coming over the sound of several other engines I have running next to it as well, so you can just tell how loud this thing is. I am just so stunned with how good this thing is. So, it looks like I found a new speaker. The only problem I have with the speaker now is I now want to replace all my speakers with them, which of course isn't going to happen. But there are one or two projects which you just can't even hear, even when they roll down the tracks. They're obviously going to get one of these speakers in them. Well, anyway, that'll do it. Take care, everyone.